What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of I'm a Barbie Elf on a Barbie Shelf. As always, I am your host, Zach Cronin, and today we're going to be talking about Karl-Anthony Towns and how dominant he's been since joining the New York Knicks. As I'm sure you remember, Towns and Julius Randle swapped places on that October 2nd blockbuster trade between the Knicks and Timberwolves. It's not exactly common to see a player of Towns' caliber get traded 3 weeks before the season begins, especially when the franchise had already made a sizable acquisition earlier that summer in Mikal Bridges. When I saw the news, I was flummoxed
Bruh.
and couldn't really construct a take. For whatever reason, I've always been biased towards Julius Randle in the sense that I think he's a better player than what people give him credit for. But also, I didn't believe that the Knicks had to trade for a complimentary superstar in Eastern Conference that's as shallow as this one is. To me, this is one of those rare instances where both teams benefited from the trade. I, of course, had no evidence to back this up, just vibes. There was, however, an equal amount of skepticism to my optimism because of how seismic a shakeup this was, but I was confident in both siding this argument. Once the shock wore off, I ran to my computer to shoot a video in which I explained that Karl-Anthony Towns fits better on the Knicks than Julius Randle does. However, Julius Randle is still a very good player in his own right. Fast forward to now, it's looking like New York is winning this deal. Despite the records of the two being separated by just 2 games, the Knicks having 14 wins to Minnesota's 12, Minnesota has been marred by inconsistency to begin this season. They're 5-5 in their most recent 10 games, which features a 4-game losing streak and a 4-game winning streak. During that same span, the Knicks are 7-3. The wins and losses are whatever record schmeckered,
Oh,
am I right? But
brother.
what's worth talking about is how Karl-Anthony Towns has found himself in the middle of the MVP race during what is the best season of his career. He's averaging 25.2 points and 13.2 rebounds while posting an effective field goal percentage of 60. That breaks down to 56.7% on twos and 45% from three. Typically, when a player records a noticeable increase in production, they're either playing more minutes or have a larger role in the offense. With Towns, neither of these are true. Both his minutes and field goal attempts are in line with his career averages. He's just playing better, more efficient basketball. Cat is one of the most unique centers that the NBA has ever seen, particularly at his size, and the Knicks are utilizing his offensive versatility better than the Timberwolves had in recent seasons. He's a tremendously lethal scorer, beginning in the post and working his way out to well beyond the 3-point line. When playing with his back to the basket means be damned, Towns can lean on his quickness with a drop step to the basket or face up and drop in a jumper with his feathery touch. Not only that, Towns is one of the rare 7-footers who can also create off the dribble. I wouldn't have called the Knicks an offensive juggernaut a season ago. A lie that brazen would be ripped out of me only if someone like kidnapped my dog. New York was the slowest team in the NBA. When your pace is that sluggish, you just don't generate a ton of possessions. As a result, they ranked only 19th in points per game, but they were able to offset that meager volume with stunning efficiency. Only 6 teams boasted a better offensive rating than they did. Since I'm in the business of truth, my assessment this season is entirely different. The Knicks are nothing short of a nuclear bomb on offense, ranking inside the top 10 in scoring volume per game while also posting an NBA best offensive rating of 121.7. This market shift coincides with the addition of Towns, but it's more than just his mere presence. There is a concerted effort to integrate him into the offense without compromising the team. The Knicks first look to reduce Towns' reliance on the three ball. He's averaging more than 5 attempts per game, but they are a lower percentage of his shots overall, accounting for less than 31% of his attempts. That rate was 35.6 over the last 2 seasons combined. Towns is a lights out shooter, so you don't want to eliminate his threes entirely, but he's such a talented, well rounded offensive player that it's a disservice not to incorporate him in other ways. His average shot distance is about 11 feet, and he's back to asserting himself within the restricted area. Currently, about 35% of Towns' attempts come inside of 3 feet, which is on pace to be the second best rate of his career and his highest since 2021-22. Last season, just 26% of Towns' attempts came inside of that zone, despite him converting nearly 70% of the time. Relative to how he began his career, Towns' last two seasons were pretty lackluster. This is largely due to him ceding more and more to Anthony Edwards, which resulted in Ant leading the team in both shot attempts and scoring. There was a shift organizationally to make Edwards the new face of the franchise, one that I totally agree with, and one that's also really hard to criticize because of how successful the team was and also what Anthony Edwards' ceiling is. Towns, however, was equally as vital in the team's success. Last season, Towns averaged a eye-popping number of spot-up attempts with 4.3. That number is down by a third this season to 2.8. The reason why Towns' threes are down across the board and why his interior scoring is up is because he's basically the only center that the Knicks have. Of course, they lost Isaiah Hartenstein in free agency, and Mitchell Robinson is still recovering from that ankle injury. Additionally, the only two centers that they can lean on are Jericho Sims and Ariel Hukporti, neither of whom are reliable enough options to see significant time. There's also more balance between Towns and Brunson than there was with Towns and Edwards, with those two being virtually identical to one another in terms of scoring and shot attempts. This isn't a shot at Anthony Edwards by any means, but I think the lack of separation between Towns and Brunson comes down to Brunson just being a more unselfish player than Anthony Edwards is, which is to be expected because they play two different positions and have two different play styles. Due to Brunson's experience and his previously mentioned skill set, he's able to maximize Towns in the pick and roll, an area where he's always been reliable. He's seeing more shots as the roll man and is shooting 56% on those attempts. Additionally, in terms of points per possession, he's in the 88th percentile. The Wolves weren't a heavy pick and roll team last season. New York was significantly more efficient in that sense. New York was significantly more efficient in that set, landing in the 79th percentile compared to Minnesota in the 38th. The Knicks ball handlers were also more careful with the basketball, turning it over just 12% of the time compared to Minnesota, who is at 16.6. This is true this season as well. The Knicks are the third best team in terms of points per possession in the pick and roll. The Timberwolves have improved, however, they now rank 11th. The difference comes down to one guy who I've already mentioned, and that is Jalen Brunson. Brunson is a superior decision maker and passer to Anthony Edwards. Brunson, for example, is turning the ball over just 8% of the time as the pick and roll ball handler. Edwards' mark is nearly double that at 14%. The result is Towns not just seeing more shots overall, but higher quality shots. But Towns is more than a two-trick pony who only knows a screen and shoot. There are dozens of ways to get him organic touches, not only in the post, but also as a cutter and having him come off screens. Take, for example, this play that the Knicks ran in Miami. Bridges and Miles McBride set staggered screens for Towns so that way he can get open on the left side corner. This action works because it takes advantage of Thomas Bryant's inability to maneuver around these screens, which is usually the case with most centers in the NBA. Towns is a very graceful runner, so not only is he able to beat Bryant to his spot, but he's able to get set for his shot. Another interesting wrinkle came in their game against Denver. I actually like this setup a lot. So this particular lineup is on the small side. It features four wings plus Towns. I can't even say four wings because two of the guys are Cameron Payne and Jalen Brunson, but whatever. So the five-man lineup is Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Cameron Payne, Mikal Bridges, and Karl-Anthony Towns. Towns starts this set in the left side corner, and it opens with a 1-3 or a 1-4 pick and roll with Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, who are guarded by Christian Braun and Nikola Jokic, respectively. Hart steps up and sets a slip screen. Now, Braun overplays this, and that overplay allows Brunson to deliver a pass to Josh Hart, who is around the free throw line. Hart collects the pass, takes a dribble, and dishes to a cutting Towns, who has an uncontested reverse layup. The beauty of this set lies in the simple concept of taking advantage of mismatches. Denver does not have an elite rim protector. And Jokic guarding Hart up at the free throw liner on the perimeter weakens that back line even more. Towns is the biggest person on the court and boasts a 6 or 7 inch advantage over his defender, who is Russell Westbrook. Westbrook does not notice this cut right away, which allows Towns to not only gain a step on him, but ahead of steam as well. This collapses the defense and forces Michael Porter Jr. to overplay on the pass. Porter Jr. was already helping off of Mikal Bridges, but you don't want to give up the easy layup, so he rotates over even more, which creates the opening on the other side of the rim. I do want to touch on one hyper specific thing before we go, and that's Towns being the trailer, whether it's as the inbounder or even in semi transition. It seems like once or twice a game he's left open on the perimeter because whoever has the ball doesn't want to penetrate and is looking for him at the top of the key. This is all by design. As a big, you're taught to grab the rebound, turn, and outlet the ball to one of your guards as quickly as possible. This allows them to push the pace, either compromising the defense or forcing them into a miscommunication. Since Towns has returned to lingering around the basket, he's rebounding at a higher rate and given more of these opportunities to ignite the break off of a rebound. As a result, the opposing center leaves him unaccounted for because as they're dropping back on defense, they're looking to help out whoever is defending the ball handler. Towns can walk into what is effectively an uncontested three, and even if the center is able to contest the shot, it's not enough because when you have a shooter of Towns' caliber, that's not going to disrupt their rhythm. You need to be in their jersey if you don't want them to get off a clean look. Let's say, for example, you're DeAndre Jordan. If you're falling back on defense, you can't simultaneously pick up Towns at half court and guard the basket as the help defender. You have to pick and choose. It really comes down to coaching philosophy and game plan. Nowadays, you're more likely to see guys extended in instances like that because 3 points is worth more than two, and Towns is a 45% shooter from that zone, but ultimately it's going to vary. But the Knicks now have the luxury of capitalizing on the defense, whether they drop back or whether they extend. I thought the Knicks were championship contenders before they traded for Karl-Anthony Towns. As I mentioned in the intro, I didn't think that acquiring a player of his caliber was necessary. The team, as it was presently constructed, I felt was good enough to be the third best team in the East behind Boston and behind Philadelphia. Obviously, now that the season is here, things have played out quite differently, but what remains is that the Knicks are still among the elite teams in the Eastern Conference. At the time of this recording, they're currently fourth. They're only a few games back behind the Orlando Magic, who, as we know, are not only without Paolo Banchero, but also now Franz Wagner. This team has issues. I don't want to really go into them too much. There are depth issues. There is, of course, like the rotation issues with Tom Thibodeau, but ultimately, I don't think any of these are going to prevent the Knicks from making a deep playoff run and even contending for a title. This is still an elite team, and I think that things are only going to get better and better, not only for Cat, but for the team as a whole, the more time that they spend together. This team, I don't think, had a full training camp, and it's a lot to ask an all-star caliber player, an all-NBA caliber guy to just slide in to your roster, but the Knicks, to their credit, they've done that, and Towns, to his credit, has done that. So I'm wholly expecting to be talking about Towns as an NBA, as a potential NBA MVP come this spring, summer, whatever. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and close this video out. Thank you guys so very much for coming to hang out with me today. As always, everything I'm associated with is down in the description box below. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Drop a comment as well. It really helps out with the algorithm. If you do any of those three things, you will become my new favorite person. And with that, I will see y'all in the next one.